We are now.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I want to take a moment first actually to acknowledge everybody in this room, especially the graduates. You did something that was incredible. 3 years of law school is not anything to, it's a pretty incredible accomplishment. Actually, I was looking at census numbers before we got on here, and there's only 8 million people in the entire country who have professional degrees. That includes the JDs, the MDs, the people who have physical therapy, master's degrees, et cetera. So that makes you part of the top 2.5% educationally right there. So that's pretty incredible. We are here to try to help you go the rest of the way. We've got some incredible people on here. Some of us, like myself, actually had some stumbling blocks on the way to defeating the bar exam. And some of us are one and done, undefeated. So inshallah, both of us have something to contribute. So with that, the first thing I'm going to do is ask each of our panelists the first question I'm asking each of our panelists is, we're about 56 days out from the big exam. If you were starting today, what is it that each of you would be doing right at this exact moment? So let me start with Sister Hannah.
If I was starting my prep today?
Yeah.
So I relied heavily on other people's expertise in terms of helping me navigate the first month of bar prep. And so, you know, our bar prep, I took a bar prep class with Kaplan, and they sort of put together a schedule that was very generic and applied to all students. And it like felt really overwhelming at the time because they pack the days, right? So like you look at this huge list of things that you have to do. But I tried to stick to that. And I'm somebody who like needs a schedule to get myself going. I need to be up at a certain time and get out of the house, or I won't get anything done. And if I'm left to my own devices, I definitely won't get anything done. So it was helpful. You know, I trusted the people who had experience early on and started with that. So that you asked for a starting point, and that's where I started.
Thank you so much. And one thing that you're going to see from all our panelists is that each of them have a very different way of coming at the exam and of studying. And I think that shows that whatever way that you have of getting there, it's going to be okay. Pay attention to how each panelist works, and you probably find somebody that you're probably the closest to, and you'll be able to benefit the most from them. So with that, I'm going to ask Brother Hamza to speak.
Hey, assalamu alaikum, everybody. Yeah, just want to echo Hassan's congratulations on everybody making it this far. It's a big achievement. It's just a final stretch here. So I just to reiterate Hassan's last point, I'll just caveat with like the way I approach the bar. I wouldn't recommend everyone to do. I tend to be a pretty good test taker, a pretty good crammer, and I ended up having just other things going on in my life, so I wasn't able to kind of give it the full summer of attention. But that said, I think, yeah, I mean, we're 2 months out. That's about when I started prepping. And I think the most important thing in my mind is to diagnose your strengths and weaknesses, particularly your weaknesses. So that could mean taking a diagnostic exam, get a feel for what are your most troublesome subject matters, and resist the temptation to study the things that you already know and like, and dive into the things that you know the least, because it's easiest to make big strides in a subject matter where you don't know that much. So just to even get to like a baseline level of understanding, I think you want to always be mindful of like, what do I hate studying? What am I least kind of like knowledgeable about, and just fill in those gaps. And then we can talk more a little later on where I went from there. But I think just, you know, as soon as you can, I think there's a temptation with bar prep, like, let me spend a few weeks just learning material before I even touch a question. And I think that is a mistake. I think you need to start, I think it's very helpful to, even before you're really ready with material, just get a sense of where your biggest challenges are going to be.
Yeah, very different. Like I said, everybody's got a different way. So let me pass it off to Carolyn.
Hi, everyone. Congratulations. Very, very proud of you, in awe of you, actually. No one else has this reference point experience similar to you. We did not take it during the pandemic, the bar exam, and we have to recognize that. I was the last part of the last group who took the bar exam right before the pandemic began. So I am a two-time bar exam test taker. I am the person who took the untraditional path, and I'm actually someone who took the bar exam out, years after I graduated from law school. So for me, I'm going to agree with Hamza. You know, taking the bar exam the first time actually served kind of like a diagnostic exam for me. It was a hard diagnostic exam, you know, experience to endure, because it was just came across as, you know, fail, fail, fail. But it helped me realize what areas I needed work on. And so I really did need to work more on my writing, actually, than I did on the multiple choice. And so the second time around, at this point in my studying, I was doing a lot of practice for writing, a lot of different prompts, so that by the time the exam came around, it really was just kind of second nature, and it wasn't so intimidating. So I would say start increasing the number of prompts you do for writing if that is the area that you know that you need help with. You know, there's a formula for it. And your bar exam or maybe bar prep materials that you have will hopefully teach you that. And it's the same formula, and you just crank them out, and repetition and practice will help you on the big day. So at this stage, that's what I was doing because I already knew that was a weakness of mine.
So you guys got a snippet from everybody. I'm going to give you one from mine. And the next question I'm going to answer at the same time, take the moderator's privilege, do two at one here. But the next thing is I wanted each panelist to talk a little bit about the context of how they came to the exam. What were their thoughts going in? What is their prior experience with exam taking? One of us is much better at it than others. And, you know, what is the context by which they walked into the exam? So I took it 3 times. The first time I took it right out of law school, I had every intention to practice law. But by the time I took it the last time, I actually had already moved into a career in which I didn't need the bar exam. I did it only because I thought at some later date I might want to practice, and it's fresher in my head right now than it was later. So I ended up taking the exam the first time. I would say I probably didn't take it seriously enough. So if you were that person, I want to speak to you right now and say, take it very seriously. You do have the capability to dominate this exam, but it does require the work. And the second time I came within 3 points. It was very brutal. It was a brutal loss. But I would say to anybody, if something happens and it goes the wrong way for you, I want you to never give up. If this is what you want with your life, you go right ahead and keep going. For that last one, I would say that what worked for me in that 2 months before to start studying for the exam was actually to get a little bit more deep into the outlines and the law of things. But within like 2 weeks, if I didn't move on to the questions, I would have been stuck in neutral. So at some point, I really do think that those questions had an effect on me, that they were allowed me to test the waters and figure out what was my weakness and what wasn't. I think that allowed me to take it to the next level. And actually, I kind of went back and forth between the outlines after that. So with that, I wanted to move on in the same order, just, you know, seamlessly one after the other. You guys can talk a little bit more about how you came to the exam and what it was like for you.
Sure. So, you know, I want to start by saying that standardized tests are a problem. But I don't think we're talking about that today. So with that caveat, let me say, I really enjoyed studying for the bar. There was something very, I don't know what the right word is, I was just excited about this challenge of like having to master an inordinate amount of information and be able to regurgitate it and articulate it. The hardest part of studying the bar for me and walking into the exam, I had to keep reminding myself of this, is it's not actually a test of legal thinking or legal reasoning in the way that that concept is introduced in law school. Nobody cares if you disagree with an opinion. Nobody cares if an opinion is sound. Nobody actually cares whether a rule is like proper. Nobody cares about your normative judgments, right? Like all the things that we're sort of taught to discuss and think about really critically in law school just do not matter in the bar exam. And this was really difficult for me in terms of transitioning the way I write and my objective when I'm writing an essay. That was challenging. So, but I walked into the bar exam half terrified because that's just life, and half excited to see how much I had learned. And that was my mindset going in. I took the bar once, I took it in California. It's a 3-day exercise. So that was not particularly exciting. And I will agree with what everybody else said about the diagnostic. I think part of our Kaplan schedule was to take a diagnostic on the first day of prep to see where you live on the major substantive issues. I had a lot of issues when I sat down for the bar. Hassan, I don't know if you want me to talk about them now or if you wanted me to cover that later.
Yeah, let's come back to that one.
Okay. But that was my mindset going in. And I do think that all bar exams are really challenging, but so much of studying for the bar and taking the exam is not getting hung up on what you're finding challenging. It's figuring out a way to overcome that challenge, figuring out a way to sort of, figure out where you need to focus and how to help yourself. And I think even during the exam, I encountered questions all the time, especially in the MBA portion, where I was like, there are like 3 options. There are 4 options. Of them, 3 seem perfectly fine. I have no idea which of these 3 to choose. And so a lot of the bar prep studying and training it's not all substantive. A lot of it is, how do I get over this like one question that's sitting in front of me that I know I'm going to get wrong, and not let that psych me out for the next question, which I have a very high chance of getting right. So that sort of like mental stamina and struggle was a huge, mental conditioning is what I'll call it. It was a huge portion of my prep.
That's awesome. Hannah, sorry. Did I say that right? Hannah. Okay.
Yeah,
I would agree with a lot of what you just said. In fact, I didn't really recall until you were speaking earlier about how I actually did enjoy the process of studying for the bar. Maybe for some of the reasons that it kind of freaked you out. I was really happy finally to get like just right answers to things, and it not being a matter of like how well I can like acrobatically ping pong arguments back and forth, but really just like, what's the answer to this? And it instead of getting into the weeds of like nuances that the professor personally, passionately, wants to drone on about, it's like, what is the baseline level of like legal like rules that you need to know? It's almost like those basic questions that we get asked by non-lawyers. It's like, oh, you're a lawyer, like what's the deal with trusts and estates? And it's like, I have no idea, but you know what? For the bar, I have to know like the minimum baseline thing that you got to know about trust and estates or divorce or whatever stuff, right? So it was finally like, okay, here's the real stuff in the real world that I need to know. So that was useful. And I think that was like a good thing to just keep in mind as I was going through some of this material. I came in to bar prep slated to join a firm, and so the firm paid for like Barbri, like the whole full luxury suite of materials, whatever they throw at you. And so I was actually, as I said, I kind of started my bar prep a little later. I was very overwhelmed by the volume of material. Like kind of said, like every day there's a schedule of like 6 hours of things to do. And I had taught LSAT prep classes before, and again, I mentioned I'm a pretty good test taker, so I pretty quickly like moved away from how they wanted me to do it. And I took a very different approach. Again, this is very specific to me and folks that kind of study like this. But what I did was I found this resource called Lean Sheets. I believe this is still in existence. It's essentially like 2 pages, like 1 page front and back of just very high level outlined information on each subject. So like there's only, I don't know how many subjects, maybe like 10, 11 subjects. So it's only like a pack of like 25 pages or something like that. And those 25 pages, I said to myself, like, okay, I'm gonna make this be all that I need. And essentially what I did was I studied the lean sheets enough to like know generally high level what all of these concepts on the front and back of each of the subject matters page means and is referring to. Even if I don't have a deep understanding, I know like generally what it is. Then I started doing questions, as many questions as I could. And every time I got a question wrong, or it was a question to which the answer was not found on the lean sheet, I just added in handwriting a little point on, hey, I need to know this little nugget of information. And slowly I like annotated the lean sheet so that over the course of several weeks, that really was like a master outline of pretty much everything I needed to know, but it was particularly tailored to like the things that I kept getting wrong, or the things that I noticed lean sheets had a little wrong. Like it's not always gospel that these resources are always correct, right? So you have to be a little critical, and stuff that I kept forgetting. And so, and also I think what's helpful about that, the way my mind works, is a little bit like photographic. I don't have photographic memory, but what I'm saying is when I'm trying to recall information, I can remember like, oh, it's on the left side in the middle page of that one page is that general area of information. And that helps me. And so there's only like, again, a front and back side of this page. So you've narrowed like the universe of stuff that you're going to be like recalling in that way. And my general philosophy is I'm just trying to get as many questions wrong as I can. Meaning all the questions that I'm going to get wrong, I need to get them out of the way right now as quickly as I can. Right. And so I'm on a hunt for like all of the questions that I'm going to get wrong right now. And I'm making a hit list as I go of, you know, volume 3 of this book, page 57, question number 6. I have a list of all of those questions that I got wrong. And then after like 2 weeks, I come back to those questions to make sure I'm getting them right this time. And slowly, I'm like systematically just doing as many questions as I can, adding information to my lean sheets, and then refreshing that for the next round of questions, and just continuously trying to find those areas of information that I don't know and beefing those up. So it was a little stressful, I'm not gonna lie, because it was funny on the day of the bar, maybe the day after the bar or something, I was with Salma and we looked at like our progress report on these Barbri, like this app or whatever, and I was only at like 16%, and it freaked me out. I was like, there's no way I passed the bar. I'll need it. But again, like I had just had a totally different, you know, approach and system, and it ended up working for me.
So yeah, actually, Hamza and I went to the same law school, so I totally agree with what Hamza was saying. In our law school, I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but folks were really more interested in the abstract legal theory. My property class did not discuss pretty much anything that was on the property section of the bar exam. We spent a lot of time just talking about like constitutional issues, eminent domain, things like that. And it's so not helpful for the actual bar exam. So I didn't feel like law school prepared me for the exam at all. Maybe other law schools do a better job of doing that. And I would say if we're paying all this money, they should better prepare us for the exam that pretty much is required, right, to make law school profitable. So I was totally lost. Also, I was taking it 4 years out of law school. I am actually kind of like Hassan in that I didn't want to practice law. I didn't find it interesting. I thought it was a lifestyle that would obviously lead to burnout for me. And then also the major reasons why is that I actually lost both my grandparents in law school. My grandmother, who was like my mom, died halfway through law school. And then my grandfather died the day before convocation for law school. And so they were my parents, basically. They raised me, and they were also helped provide financial support, and they were my place of living when I was not in school. So all that kind of just dropped from under me. And I didn't really have a place to stay or financial support. And I also didn't really know why I was in law school. And my whole identity was shaken. There was no real passion or interest in pursuing anything to do with law, because I felt like I was doing it for them and now they were gone. So I really had to fall in love with law again on my own and really find a reason for wanting to do it at all. And so 4 years of working actually led me back to wanting to get the license to practice. And so I've been working it for Washington State government and in policy, equity, diversity, and inclusion policy, mainly, civil rights laws, disability, and language, Title VI Civil Rights Act. So I found purpose because I saw in the real world, having the license, having the legal knowledge and expertise made sense for my job. It would only elevate me professionally. So now I had my own reason to take the bar exam. So I went for it. Again, it was 4 years out of law school. So I am not a good test taker. And I also checked out of law school halfway through because, my grandma passing. So I was really, really out of the loop and I had no foundational knowledge. And already I'm a weaker test taker, just as, inexperienced. So I had to at least try it the first time. And I went the traditional route that everybody else took as if I was still a 3L or recent graduate. That was a terrible, terrible idea. I was not real with myself. I was not a regular 3L about to graduate or recent graduate from law school who actually spent 3 years paying attention. That should have been, I should have kept it real back the first time I took the exam. So I took Themis the first time around. Themis was intense and it was a self-study and on-demand videos and the big books. I did maybe about 20% was my progress before I took the exam. And I, didn't pass. So I realized I just need to accept that I'm not like everybody else and my circumstances are a lot different. So I actually went with JD advising the second time around because I was keeping it real. I needed somebody to hold my hand. I need somebody to go through the basics and whittle down all of the materials so that they are just very short. And so that I could digest them and just focus on them. And so I would say JD Advising did a great job of that. I passed. I got a score high enough to be licensed anywhere. Washington State has a higher score than New York. So for all purposes, I was like, the second time around, just keeping it real with myself paid off. And I will never have to take the UBE again. Thank you. Thank goodness. But it was a hard road. And so, all of the life circumstances, not having the support, financially needing to pay for the bar exam myself, needing to work first to build that up. Not having like my parents there at all supporting me. So yeah, there was a lot going on for me. I don't know if this rings true for anybody else on the participants. I am here to just say it can be done. You really just need to do some soul searching for yourself. And I spent the years really doing a lot of meditation, which helped me a lot to figure out like who I am, why I'm even here. Does this even matter? All the whys. You should probably have a better concept of that before you just dive in than I did. So long answer, I'm sorry, but that's really where I was when I took the bar exam.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, Carolyn. That's the first time I heard it, I got a chance to pre-interview with everybody. I was astounded. And I think it's an incredible achievement that you had, probably an even greater victory, certainly than what I had. So I applaud you. And I thank you so much for telling that story. If you are going through something like that, one of the attendees, and there's any way we can support you, please let us know and reach out to us. Okay. You opened the door to another question. We're going to do I wanted to ask the rest of you, what bar prep course did you choose? And I'll go first. I actually chose Themis And I was a representative for Themis at my school. So, and here's something very interesting. I actually completed 25% of the course when I succeeded. So just 5% more. That's all you need. But let me pass it off to Hannah. Sister Hannah, you could tell us, some people are already kind of locked in, but for those who aren't, we'll just kind of preview what everybody did and if they had a good experience.
Sure. So our law school had been using Barbri, and in our year, of course, they decided to transition to Kaplan. It was more affordable, and I think they were willing to do like live classes on campus, a couple of them. So, I didn't really so I had the option of choosing between Barbri and Kaplan. I found them to be very similar. Like it's just practice questions, grading, and outlines. So I think a lot of this is sort of like what you make with the material, unless of course you're in a non-traditional situation like the one Carolyn was in, which I think that level of thoughtfulness, by the way, was inspiring for me even now. Just staying grounded. So I took Kaplan. I thought it was fine and great. I will say one thing that sort of walks back what I said earlier, which is when I started my bar prep, I was very adamant about sticking with the requirements that they'd set out. And that's because I didn't have a plan of my own. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks in, it became clear that like I'd had really good professors who had allowed space for critical thinking while also providing me sort of the bones that I needed for the bar exam. And taking practice, sort of like doing the number of practice questions that Kaplan wanted me to do was not helping me. I think I was maybe doing 10 or 15 practice questions a day, and that seemed like enough for me. There are people who did 50 a day. There are people who've done 75 a day. I think this is very much like you knowing yourself and where you need to work on things. I also don't think I wrote out full essays in the first couple of weeks, but then it became clear that my writing style is fine, my organization is fine. Where I could use work is issue spotting. So then I just would print out essays, spot the issues, check the issues in the model answer to make sure I'd caught them all and not actually write out the full essay. And one of the reasons I chose to sort of tweak the schedule as I became clear what I was and wasn't good at was because my way of learning is outlining. I can't have somebody hand me an outline and me memorize it. That's just like not my way of being in the world. I got to write it out. And that's time consuming. And so rather than spending, the California exam, when I took it, was 6 essays, 2 performance exams, and a full day of, the MBE, the standard exam that everybody takes. And I think we had to study 17 subjects. It was just like a lot of material to cover. And so you have to be judicious about what you're doing, no matter what bar prep program you choose. But I chose Kaplan and it worked. It was fine.
Yeah, I would echo some of that. So I took Barbri, as I mentioned. It was just provided, I think, through my firm. But I do agree. Unless I think Carolyn had good reasons for a different format. You got to know yourself. You got to know kind of what works best for you. But if you're at all like me in terms of like self-studying, self-starting, kind of setting your own schedule type stuff, I don't think the course matters really just as much as long as you have ample practice questions, ideally like somewhat real and not like different difficulty levels that they just like made up these questions that don't resemble actual bar questions, but like as much as possible real bar questions or very, very realistic bar questions with model answers. And again, I grabbed lean sheets. I didn't even really use that course that much. I think the practice questions are really the raw material in my kind of approach. That said, yes, the essays were a little different from just churning out multiple choice questions and answers. So definitely took a little bit of practice using some of the Barbri kind of framing and formatting, and here's how the essay should look, and looking through the model answers to make sure I was able to replicate those as closely as possible. And I think you definitely, just like the practice questions, everything I've been saying about practice questions, I've been kind of referring to the multiple choice, but same thing applies to the essays. You kind of have to just go through a few times of writing it out, because you might think you know everything about this question until you start writing it and you're like, shit, I don't actually know how to articulate like all these different things and how to set this up. So you got to just, just go through those practice questions. Again, particularly just trying to be as systematic as possible on subject areas that are not comfortable for you, and just continuously hammering those weak spots.
So again, I did end up being successful with JD advising rather than Themis, even though I think it would have been free to retake Themis because they have a guarantee, I think. But I would just, again, you have to keep it real with yourself. Themis didn't work for me. I'm a different type of learner. I needed more hand-holding, more one-on-one. I was very, very rusty. And so I went with JD advising for those reasons. They had a pretty rigorous class, that would convene multiple times a week. And then also a lot of one-on-one training with my essays. So I got a lot of feedback, and the, folks who were, grading them we would have conversations about them, very detailed notes and recommendations. And so, yeah, I got coached for my writing. And so JD advising had that aspect. I really also, again, really liked the materials because they were, kind of streamlined. And so I wasn't expected to learn a bunch of other things. I thought I was really kind of geared towards more of the essentials for the exam, which I appreciated. And then also with JD advising, I'm going to throw this out there. I benefited from their prediction of what subjects would be on the writing portion of each of the exams every year. They are, and I'm going to put this disclaimer out there, they cannot be trusted 100%, right? These are just educated guesses based on how frequently other subjects have appeared on past exams, right? So they'll predict, this year we haven't seen con law. Actually, no, yeah, they predicted both the multiple choice section subject. No, just the writing, because multiple choice, yeah. Anyway, I'm already forgetting about the exam, how it's set up. But yeah, they predicted 80% correct. The year that I took it, February, the year that was successful, February 2020. And so because I had kind of towards the end really focused on those subjects that they predicted were going to be on the exam, I ended up actually doing really well on the writing section because I think I was better prepared than others. For example, I'm pretty sure a lot of folks didn't cover securities as thoroughly as I did. And they had predicted securities was going to be on the exam. So just a little tidbit, if you do see, it's free to everyone for this information. JD Advising makes these predictions. Doesn't hurt if you've already covered all your material and are just kind of trying to review. You can spend a little bit of time on subjects that just haven't been tested and are probably going to come up. It doesn't hurt. But yeah, I think JD Advising had those strengths. Again, not for everyone. If you're a good self-studier, self-starter, I'm the one who just really needed a lot of one-on-one coaching.
Yeah, well, thank you all for that. I really appreciate it. Anybody who's not locked in, I, would advise you to take a second look at maybe the course that you think fits you the best based on, how different each of us are and the way that we study. Next, I wanted to dive a little deeper into a piece of the exam. We've already talked a little bit about essays, but I wanted to go back. And anybody who has a specific tip, if you don't, you want to pass on this one, you can get in on the next round. So let me start with Sister Hannah.
Yeah, I think I've got two tips here. One I've said, which is as you get closer, if, so long as you're writing, so long as somebody's graded your essays and said your writing is fine and your organization is good, focus on the issue spotting. And the second tip I'll give is don't go over time on your questions. This was something I really had to work on. Was we had 3 hours to answer 3 questions, and I was not always diligent about finishing my outline of my response in the first 15 minutes and then spending 45 minutes writing. But that was something I had to get better at, because you can always go back if you have time left over and beef up an essay in your section. But if you run out of time, that could be fatal. So just move on. And it's better to get 2 sentences out about each issue than a beautifully written, articulate paragraph about 3 issues and not say anything about the remaining 4. So just budget your time accordingly. It's not a law school exam. You're not getting points for like the sub issue that you raised. It's better to just like hit as many of the major things as you can. And if you have extra time, like I said, go back and finesse. I also outlined in my computer. So on the, some people like to write out their outlines. I find that to be a complete waste of time. Like outline in the screen where you're going to type your essay and then go in and flesh. Like you're just saving yourself time already. Your outline can even be your headings. And then you're like, you have even less to do when you go back and write your essays. This is also silly, maybe, I don't know. I used to feel guilty taking too many breaks. I did take a break. I don't know if this is on the agenda, but like mental health breaks, very important. I watched Legally Blonde for the first time while I was studying for the bar, just saying. But on the days when I felt like I had taken 2 sort of meaningful breaks, but needed a mental break, I would do typing, like, what are they called? Competitions with like random people all over the world to speed up my typing, which is silly, but I don't know. I feel like it helped me, because when you're running low on time, if your fingers know where to go to follow the speed of your brain, it can't hurt you. So that's my last tip.
What was the question here, Hassan?
I wanted to delve deeper on the essay exam and just ask you, and before you go, I just wanted to pull one thing out of a pre-interview with Sister Hannah that I don't think she mentioned, which is that when she was doing essay exams, she told me that when she took the essay questions, she didn't actually write out each one. She usually did issue spotting for each essay prompt that was given to her through Kaplan. And, if she had time, she would go back, but that actually allowed her to get through essay questions faster, because then you can just review and say, oh, did I hit the issues? Did I get all the issues? And I thought that was brilliant. I wish I had thought of that when I was studying, because it would have sped up my essay section studying myself. But with that, I'll pass it off to you, Brother Hamza.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also did that, meaning I didn't write, once I had gone through the motions and I knew how to write an essay and I felt pretty comfortable that I could replicate that, IRAC format or whatever. I also just did issue spotting through essays to make sure that that was a skill that I had on lock. I would agree also with I also took notes like in screen, and I just kind of beefed up those notes once I had an outline. I think outlining is extremely important. I don't know how people just start writing off the top of their head. For me, just keeping everything organized, making sure I have everything that I want to say in a relatively organized order. I don't know if I have much else to add about essays.
Yep, I think I'm the same. I really just had to get the IRAC formula down, just repeat it enough times. And that's really what I receive most coaching on, is just getting that drilled down. Knowing the rules, you're not gonna do well on the essay if you don't know enough of the rules. And because that's part of the outline, right? You should be able to just plug the rule right in there. So I obviously just needed to hunker down and really just know the rules, so that the outline could just be easily built around the rules that I could just plug in. I think it's just a lot of it is anxiety, reading the passage first, overcoming that initial shock, like, oh my God, like what is going on in this scenario? Like, is this even something that's like gonna actually happen in real life? I mean, it can be overwhelming just reading some of the prompts that they have. So I would say, yeah, once you just do enough of them, you realize they reuse a lot. They just put different names on different individuals and change the circumstances just a tad. But once you do enough of the practice, you'll see they kind of stick to a lot of the same like issues that will be tested. And so if you know the issues that will be tested, then from prior tests used real old exams, please use real old exams, then you're really going to be, I think, okay for the essay part of it. For me, it was just overcoming that initial, just overwhelming when you see like just the prompt. So.
All right, guys, we're running short of time. We're almost at the end of the hour. So I've got 2 questions left, one for Brother Hamza, one for Sister Hannah, and then we'll close out. But before then, I'm just going to let them go organically after this. But before them, I just want to make a plug. Please join us at the American Muslim Bar Association. If you're not already a member, you could sign up on ambalegal.org. I'm going to post that in the chat in just a moment. We'd love to have your involvement. Not now, you're studying for the exam, focus on the exam. Inshallah, in about 2 months, we hope to welcome you to the bar, and we would hope to have your participation in the organization, anything you're interested in. We do a lot of different things. Mentorship, we think, is the cornerstone of what we do, but there's a lot more, and we'd love to have your input and your ideas and your energy. So with that, my question for Brother Hamza is about the MBE. We talked about in the pre-interview a certain methodology you have in the way that you approach the question and the way you read the question. And I just wanted you to go over that so that people who may not have thought about that or had that influence from anybody else would get a chance to talk about that. And, you know, Sister Hannah, after that, I'd like you to talk about an emergency situation that happened to you on the day of the bar that nobody should ever have to go through. So with that, Brother Hamza, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So this comes out of, I guess, just stepping back and trying to understand what does like reading comprehension really mean, like as you're reading this stuff. I think especially in like a high stress, timed situation, like Carolyn mentioned, like you're starting to read and you're like, oh shit, what's going on? Oh my God, oh my God. And there's a tendency to read just by like moving your eyes over the text and like mentally pronouncing the words in order, but not actually understanding what you just read. And I think what like deep reading comprehension really means to me is you're like visualizing what you're reading. Like every word or every clause is conjuring an image in your imagination, in your mind's eye. And there's different things that you can do to make that even more even more vivid. For example, I will try to find somebody in my life who's like somehow stereotypically potentially like the same as the person that this question is talking about. If it's like a question about criminal law, it's like my friend who's always getting into trouble and I'm imagining this poor guy like who just ran somebody over or something like that, right? I'm trying to make these things jump out and come to life as much as possible. I think another aspect of this is when you're reading, especially multiple choice questions, there's a tendency to rush through reading like the prompt, like the informational stimulus, and just rush to the question and answer portion of the question, because that's where you score points. You don't score points by reading the intro, you score points by like getting to the meat of the question and answer. The problem with that is if you rush through that initial, like the meat of it, and you get to the question and answers, if you didn't quite comprehend and deeply understand, and in my approach, in a visual way, what the situation is up top, then you're going to get into problems in the answer options. And suddenly both B and D look amazing. And you can't, and now you're in this epic dilemma between B and D, and you're staring at B and you're rereading B and you're rereading D, but really the problem doesn't lie there. The problem lies in up top and like really understanding that information well up top. But guess what? When you're, as I'm saying, reading visually, it slows you down a little bit, right? That's just part of it. But it feels like you're moving really, really slowly when you read carefully the stimulus. But when you get into epic debates between answer choice B and answer choice D, suddenly 4 minutes can go by and you don't even realize that, right? And so it's this kind of weird paradox, but like slowing down even a little bit, like taking 5 extra seconds to read that stimulus can often save you many minutes down in the question and answer portion. And so I think this applies to essays as well. Like if you're rereading text, you didn't read it properly the first time. So my suggestion is just read a little slower. And really what you're doing is you're reading at the pace that your mind can conjure images of what you're reading. So if I read like a clause, I get to a comma, I make sure I see that. Then I read another clause, it's denser information, it's confusing information. I'm not ready to move past that next comma. I have to sit for a second and say, okay, let me just make sure I understand this before I'm ready to move on. Obviously, this is like, it's a little bit of like, subjective. Like you got to make kind of like momentary calls. Like, okay, I think I got 80% of that. I just have to finish reading this paragraph. I'm not gonna, stay here too long. But if you practice this visual reading thing over the next few weeks, I think that can really help not just your score because you're understanding things better, you're getting things more correct, but it actually saves you time because you're not getting into these like quicksand traps of sucker choice answer choices that they implant in there specifically for the kids who don't read that stimulus very carefully. The other thing I will say very quickly is when you inevitably get caught in these mental traps of shit, I just spent way too much time on this question, and now you're on the next question, but you're like, oh my God, I just spent 6 minutes on the last question. So how many minutes does that leave me for the next 10 questions? And you're doing this math now. Or you're like, you know what, I picked B in the last one, but I don't feel very great. I think it was D. And you're like thinking about that next question. You're thinking about how much time you have left for the next, all of this stuff, right? Your mind is jumping around. My escape hatch out of that situation is to take a deep diaphragmatic breath. If you don't know what diaphragmatic breath is, you can Google this. It's very simple, but it's just like really like inhabiting your body, giving yourself a breath, giving yourself a deep diaphragmatic breath. That means you're putting oxygen in parts of your lungs that don't usually get oxygenated. That's now oxygenating your brain. It's just helping everything work better. And I return to what is the image in the words right now. The last question doesn't matter. The future questions don't matter. I need to return to the present moment. And the present moment really means I need to visualize this word right here, right in front of me. Word by word by word, image by image by image. And I slowly return to like the flow in the present moment. So that's my approach.
And then I will share my emergency story. So I like to arrive at the bar exam site early. And I did. I think I was there 45 minutes early on the first day of the bar exam, had all my stuff set up, my little wax earbuds things, everything that I thought I would need. I'd gone to the bathroom like way too many times just to make sure everything had been emptied out. And it's like 15 minutes before the bar exam is supposed to start, and the proctors had come by and like checked my name periodically and checked my area as they're supposed to do. But this time the proctor came up to me and said, "You're not on my list." And I was like, "What are you talking about? Like literally 4 people have already checked me and I've been on their list." And they said, "Oh, no. I think you want to wear a head covering during the exam, and you're not on my list of people who are approved to wear a head covering during the exam." And I was like, "Say what now? Like you have a list of people that are approved to do what?" I was totally shocked and terrified because I didn't know what she was going to say next. She asked me to come outside. There was a representative from the state bar there. And I'm like, I was literally shaking and just terrified. They were about to start sort of like preliminary instructions. The whole reason I'd come here 45 minutes was to not miss those. And I was outside with the state bar representative who told me that I had to obtain authorization before the bar exam date to wear a head covering per the bar exam rules. And because I hadn't done that, he was going to write me up, and he gave me a pink slip that was a notice of violation of exam rules. I graduated second in my class. Like this was just like a completely horrible, harrowing experience for me. Not something I had ever anticipated would happen. Not something, it didn't even cross my mind. I mean, I've taken a million standardized tests to become a lawyer. No, but even the MPRE, which is required for like bar membership, there's no sort of like head covering rule. So I didn't even think to look for a rule like this. Anyway, it gives me the notice of violation of exam rules. I have to leave it on my desk for all 3 days of the bar exam. Sort of this like mark. That's how I felt. I felt like it was like this just like very attention drawing object that was sitting next to my laptop. And I asked the representative from the state bar, what are the consequences of this notice? Because like, are you still going to let me take the test? I spent the whole summer studying for it. And he said, oh, you can still take the test, but they might throw your score out. They might invalidate the exam. So I was, okay, well, all right. So I had to march back in to my desk with my pink slip and leave my pink slip on the table. And I think it was like 8:27 or 8:28. I had just minutes left, and I was shaking. I remember taking those diaphragmatic breaths, Hamza, and trying to calm my body because I don't know. I don't think I've shook the way that I was shaking that day. And I prayed because what else are you supposed to do in that situation? I didn't have my phone. I couldn't call anybody for help to figure out like what on earth to do. And God heard my prayer that day because I booted up the exam, and the first question was a civil procedure question. The second was real property. And the third was criminal procedure. And these were 3 classes, probably my top 3 favorite professors in law school, thoughtful, bar oriented, but also like change the world oriented, just like the perfect mix. I TA'd 2 of those classes. It was just like, somebody's looking out for me. And because those 3 questions were the questions that were in front of me, my body stopped shaking. But it was like that was the result of preparation and honestly, like the Lord, like I just don't know what else to attribute it to. But if I hadn't come, if the first question had been community property, a subject obviously that I'd studied, but just like couldn't recite in my sleep, I don't know how I would have fared on the bar exam. Because being able to sort of like calm yourself down, I found that very challenging. And it also felt, I had to sit with it for 3 days. And each day I got progressively more offended by sort of what the bar is saying about women who wear hijab or, other people from other faiths who cover their ears or cover their heads. And there was there's just sort of no reason for a rule like this, especially because every test you take that gets you to the point of the bar exam doesn't require anything like this. And I haven't been able to get a good reason from anybody at the state bar for a rule like this. So that's my emergency story. It was awful, but I'm grateful every day to the same body that put me through this also picked those first 3 questions. And for that, I'm grateful. I will say there's a little bit of a movement to try and challenge the rule or at least gain some clarity around it. So if anybody in the audience knows members of other faiths or knows hijabi women that have been affected or impacted by this rule, or if you know any current law students that are having to sort of navigate the rule. Again, I took the bar in California, so I know we have that rule here, but there might be the same rule in other states. Please reach out to us. AMBA is very much interested in playing our part in challenging this rule. And to do that, we need stories and we need people to talk to us about what their experiences have been. So you can reach me at secretary@ambalegal.org, and we can put that in the chat if you have a story to tell that's like mine. Or if you know someone who'd be willing to talk to us about their story, please put us in touch with them. But remember that preparation can get you through anything. And that was sort of my takeaway walking out of the exam that first day or walking out for lunch that day. I was ready for those 3 questions. And because of that terrible experience I'd had that morning, I was able to put it away and just focus on the questions because I knew what I was supposed to do in response to them. So, okay, that's my emergency story, Hassan.
So
Thank you so much. We're about 2 minutes over, but I really appreciate the very harrowing stories that the sisters have shared with us today. The incredible tips that all of you have shared and the inspiration that you've given us. I am pulling for everybody who's taking the bar exam this July. We'll be thinking about you. We'll be praying for you. And if there's anything that we can do in the meantime, please let us know. If you're getting nervous closer to game day and you just need somebody to calm you down, I'm telling you, we're all here for you. So please do drop us a line. Okay. Thank you so much. And hope to get another chat in some other day. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you for organizing.
Yep.
Bye.